So this is the 26th episode for the Climbing Flow podcast, and today's guest, I'm talking to Richard Jensen, who is or was an avid aid climber. Has done some incredible hard aid climbing ascents, and we have a deep conversation and delve into fear and why he ended up into aid climbing. For those that know Richard's story about one of his historic ascents in Yosemite Valley, I have attached a link in the description that will take you to the YouTube video called Assault on El Cap. For those that don't know, follow the link, and it's a subject we touch upon in our conversation, but we don't delve into it too much. If you want to know more about the background story, follow the link and find out more about what happened. I hope you enjoyed the episode.
How are you doing?
I'm very well. How are you?
I'm better. Getting over COVID and all of its side effects. So my voice is still a little bit husky, and I may be clearing my throat, but I think I'm pretty much back.
Okay, cool. So, how long have I got you for?
You can have a whole 2 hours.
Cool, amazing, brilliant. If we, I'm sure we will. I mean, the amount of stories you could probably tell will probably keep us busy for a few days. But we'll stick to 2 hours.
I'll let you direct me.
Amazing, cool, thanks. So what I'll do a quick introduction and then we'll get started. So today is the 26th episode for the Climbing Flow podcast. Today's guest is none other than Richard Jensen. For anyone listening at home, Rich is not in the limelight as currently in the climbing world, but he enjoys the dark art of aid climbing and has got some
Well,
pretty. Say that again.
well said.
Yeah, and you've got some incredible ascents under your belt.
Well, I guess opinions vary.
Of course, opinions vary. Yeah, yeah, we can get into that. So, tell me about your story. How did you get into climbing?
Almost nobody ever asks that. So way back when I was 10 years old, I attended a summer camp.
Yeah.
And so when I was riding up on the bus, I wanted to get into archery. And so I imagined, putting the arrow into the target and, visions of Robin Hood and all this. So I get to the camp, and my bus was one of the later ones to arrive, and all of the sessions had filled up. So it was a 1 week camp, and you would be in a cabin with other kids that were in your particular kind of session.
Yeah.
But by the time I got there, the only two sessions that were still available were beadwork and rock climbing. And beadwork was the one co-ed class, and I was more afraid of girls than whatever this rock climbing bit was. So
Okay.
I wanted no part of beadwork, and I couldn't imagine doing beadwork for a week anyway. So I ended up in the rock climbing class,
Yeah.
and I hated it. I was terrified. The first day they had us do rappelling, I couldn't cope with it at all. I had this counselor named Rick. I remember him very well, even after all these decades. And Rick was so kind and so patient with me. He would work with me after the other kids had gone back to the cafeteria. And I always just did terrible. Everything everybody could do well and easily just so terrified me. I just like couldn't cope. So this was extremely, I don't know, life changing for me because I had this mirror to myself, I think, for the first time. And I realized that I was this timid little useless kid who just was never going to amount to anything, that I was just so terrified that it really deeply troubled me. So when I got on the bus to head back home after the week, Rick came up to me on the bus and he said, I know you're feeling really low, man, but look, rock climbing's just a thing. I mean, some people are good at it, some aren't. Don't worry about it. I mean, don't let it get you down. But the 2 hour drive on the bus back to our home area, I don't know, it just rankled at me deep in the core of me that just like I could see that there was something here, that I don't know, it got to me at the most fundamental level. And at that moment, it was absolutely life changing for me. And I just said, I'm going to be a climber. I'll never be any good at it, but I will not let this life of fear consume me. I just
Yeah.
refuse to live a life of fear.
Yeah.
And so, I'm going to figure out a way to beat this. I'm going to figure out a way to deal with fear.
Yeah.
And that literally has been my entire climbing mission. It was always very internal for me, very purposeful. I had no desire I never imagined I would amount to anything in it. It was just like a personal discipline for me to confront fear at the most basic level and not be driven by it.
Yeah. Yeah. That sounds familiar. Yeah, I think um, where when I was a kid, I guess climbing's there's so much in your head. When I was a kid, I spent a lot of time being scared of things, and um, I remember going on the ghost train, but I'd have my eyes closed and my head buried under my dad's arm. I
Yeah, yeah.
I'd go on the roller coaster, but I keep my eyes closed. I spent a lot of my younger years being really scared, and I think, like yourself, it really frustrated me. And I think I've become so immersed in climbing that it's a way for me to face my fears.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah,
I don't know of any other activity. I mean, like let's take base jumping or other extreme sports. It's terrifying in a moment,
yeah,
but there's a momentary decision, and you either choose to jump or you choose not to. And so climbing is so different from that in that it's not this moment of decision.
yeah,
If you're on a long aid pitch, let's say you're on lead for 12, 14 hours, as I have been at many times, it's that moment of decision again and again and again and again, spanning those 12, 14 hours. And so you're in this crucible of decision. You're in this crucible of this inward, almost, for me, it's almost a Zen-like state where
yeah,
you're just so focused in this crucible of self-confrontation. There's nothing else like it.
yeah. And I think, like you say, there are other sports where you have that momentary feeling of fear, but climbing is such a, uh, I guess, especially aid climbing, is such a slow, you're making such slow progress that you can
Yes.
be in that state of fear for so much longer.
Yeah. Yeah. People I've done so many slideshows, and the question I get asked so much is, well, are you some kind of adrenaline junkie? Do you have a death wish? And it's like, you can't be an adrenaline junkie because your adrenal gland is squeezed out, within the
Yeah,
first 20 minutes. I mean, it's not a rush.
yeah,
It's not pleasant. It's not fun. I try to tell people the kind of climbing I do is just grim. It's
yeah,
just grim.
yeah,
And then the question is, why in the world would you do it then? Why subject yourself to something that everything you say about it just sounds horrible? It's
yeah,
indescribably painful. It's physically grueling. It's mentally draining. It's just grim. And yeah, why would you do that?
Why would you do
And
that exactly? Why would you do that, Richard?
yeah, well, to somebody who has to ask that question, you can't explain the answer. There's this astounding clarity. There's this, as I said, it's like a Zen-like state. There's just this empowerment that is beyond description.
Yeah,
And it's, frankly, to me, it's worth risking dying for.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, it's, I guess I'm assuming, like, only talking for myself, I, in those moments, don't think about wanting to die. Never do I ever want to die.
Right.
Is it worth dying for? I don't know. I've never asked myself that question, but I guess as a climber, when you do a lot of it, you do end up in situations where maybe sometimes it could be a fairly close call. And
Yes.
do
Yeah.
you,
And
sorry,
the numerous climbs I've done, I've left the ground thinking there's a non-zero chance that you don't come back from this, or you end up worse than dead. And I've always felt like, I'm looking down at the ground or some ledge or something and thinking, I'm going to hit that from 100 feet up. You know, I want to ensure that somehow I get turned around and go head first because,
yeah,
I don't want to end up not dead out of this fall.
yeah,
I don't want to live a life being a vegetable or,
yeah,
so busted up that I'm a head on a stick or something. So,
yeah,
and even that kind of talk, I mean, one thing I love about the climbing community is the morbid humor. Um, it's just, look, people spend their whole lives trying to carve out a comfort zone for themselves and
yeah,
have this sense of security,
yeah,
and there's something about climbing, at least at a certain level,
yeah,
uh, a certain sort of climbing, a certain level of climbing, where that all just gets stripped away, and the mortality of life, the grimness of life, is really front and center. And the best possible reaction to that is to laugh in its face.
yeah,
And and I love that about climbing.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, I can remember quite a few scenarios where it has felt for me close, in those moments, close to, um, yeah, in those moments, thinking I don't want to be there anymore, but that you have no option.
Yes.
That there is no get out clause. There isn't a fairy that's going to come and rescue you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Exactly. Exactly.
yeah, and
So
that's
I'm curious. I know what motivates me, but you were asking the question along with me. Why? What makes you do it, Kevin?
what makes me do it. I think it's for me, it's to be able to control my fears, to be able to face my fears head on, to be able to challenge myself physically and mentally, to take myself away from our comfortable lifestyle and to feel discomfort so that when I do come back to reality, that I appreciate everything I have around me, anything from the food that I have on the table, the my wife who lies in bed next to me, my kids, hot water that comes out of the tap, gas, just just water out of a tap that's drinkable. Just simple things.
Yes.
And it
Yes.
puts, I think for me, it puts life into perspective that sometimes we look at things and some of the things that we don't appreciate, we all of a sudden really appreciate in those moments. And it puts life in
Yeah.
perspective and what's really valuable.
yeah. I am so with you. Yeah. There's this stark contrast between the semi numbness that we go through life with,
Yeah.
and then, yeah, a good climbing experience just crystallizes life again, anew. It's refreshing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. And although I do experience, I'm not sure whether you ever heard of it, in the outdoor industry, they refer to fun that you have in the outdoor industry as type one, two, and three.
No, I haven't heard of this.
Okay, so type one fun is you're enjoying the activity itself. Type two fun is you're not enjoying the activity, but upon reflection, you feel that you've achieved something. And then type three fun is it's not fun whilst you're doing it, and it's not fun looking back on it. And I think how I think about aid climbing, my very, very, very limited experience in aid climbing, it's the it lingers between type two and three fun.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
Yeah,
Yeah, I do think that's fair. I think really hard aid climbs. I mean, so obviously there's a whole spectrum of aid climbs,
of course.
and and I don't think the ratings are really all that useful.
Yeah,
Um, I mean, I've been scared to death on A3s,
yeah.
and I've done many pitches rated A5 and even A6. I mean, I've done the two climbs in the world that have ever been rated A6.
Okay.
Um, and I mean, I didn't put them up and rate them A6. They were both done by other people, and I did the second ascents.
Yeah,
And in all cases, I have felt like the A5s were not nearly as scary as supposedly easier things
yeah,
that I've done. Now, I've been scared on A5,
yeah.
um, but I've been scared on A2 and A3 because, frankly, let's say you're on an A3 and you're looking down 20 or 30 feet to a really bad landing. And if this placement that you're on fails, you're going to hit that stuff down there.
Yeah.
Well, it's A3 because you're going to take a 20, 30-foot fall, but that landing is so horrible. I
Yeah,
mean, you're not coming out of that the same,
yeah,
right? You
yeah,
you are not going to be the same human being if you take that fall.
yeah,
So now this rating doesn't map onto the consequences
yeah,
because aid ratings are all about fall distance and to a lesser extent, the risk of maiming or death. But A3 is A3, and I don't know. I'm always looking at the consequences. Some of the hardest rated aid pitches, you might fall 300 feet, but you're falling through the air.
yeah,
Well, that's a long, exciting fall, but you're not getting hurt out of that.
yeah, 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 yeah.
A 30
Well,
foot fall onto a ledge, that's grim.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Like what happened on the first pitch of Wings of Steel.
Yeah, you're looking at a ground fall from 60 feet up
Yeah,
on the first pitch of Wings of Steel. And to me, the amazing thing about how that climb was slandered over 30 plus years is you can walk to the base of it, you can look up. Anyone with a functioning brainstem can look up and realize that's not a bolt ladder.
yeah,
You can look up at where the first bolt is, you can look up at where the next rivet is above that. You can do the math in your head and you can see from the ground that you're looking at a 50 or 60-foot ground fall.
yeah,
Like guaranteed, you're going to take that 50 or 60-foot ground fall if a particular hook fails. I mean, you can look right at the first pitch and say, that's no game.
yeah,
So how did that thing for so many years get successfully called a bolt ladder?
yeah. I mean, I guess so. I guess let's turn the clock back. Let's turn the clock back, and we'll get on to Wings of Steel if that's okay. Um,
Sure.
so you're facing your fears, your 10-year-old Richard, and you decide to want to go climbing on the way home from that summer camp. So what kind of stuff did you start doing after that?
Well, I had no gear, so the first thing I started doing was climbing trees, like these big eucalyptus trees that there are in Southern California.
Yeah,
And eucalyptus trees are really interesting because they have these long, slippery trunks and then these occasional branches that jut out.
yeah,
So it's almost like a free soloing project to shinny your way up these trunks and get to a branch and hang out on the branch for a while and then shinny higher. And you try to get up into those tip top little branches so that the wind is swaying you all around. And I started experiencing the exhilaration of, so the fear started getting mapped onto exhilaration of
yeah,
being way up high and looking around and feeling the wind sway you around. And eventually, in my early teens, my mom started buying me some basic gear. I started going out to like Mount Rubidoux. I was always in SoCal, and yeah, just slowly over the course of years, engaging in more and more real climbing,
yeah,
and I guess taking decades and summing them up, as they say, the rest is history. Uh, so it's just a very slow, methodical progression. Lots of reading. I loved reading. I just immersed myself in all of the greats of the time. Chenard and Harding and Robbins, and just the whole ethos of the climbing community at the time. Just
yeah,
immersing myself in that history.
yeah, yeah. And um and then how did you meet Mark?
So I reached a point in my late teens in which I was doing a lot of free soloing. Um, so there's an area called Big Rock down in Southern California, and it's about a 180 to 200 foot high kind of dome, and it's a lot of face climbing. And so I got quite good at face climbing. And I just was really enraptured by this idea of free soloing, and I climbed there multiple times a week. And so I got to the point where I could free solo pretty much everything at Big Rock. I was doing even the 510Ds and even 511A there, and so I was really good at just basically running around the rock and doing all the 5.8s and 5.9s and some of the lower 5.10s.
Yeah,
Um, and I was feeling very confident free soloing on the 5.10 face. Um, so I was starting to get something of a reputation in a small group of climbers. And so Mark and his friend Tim showed up at Big Rock one day, and I didn't know them, but I was free soloing around and came back, and we were kind of hanging out under a tree at a picnic table eating lunch, and I was talking with the two of them and talking about how I was really getting serious about aid climbing, and I was starting to put up some routes at this riverside quarry, and they were starting to get into aid climbing and were finding it really fascinating. And we were just talking and talking about free soloing and aid climbing, and how do you go from free soloing, which is like the ultimate in free climbing, to this incredibly technical, artificial, everyone says, form of climbing. Like, how could the two of those even be climbing?
yeah,
So I was talking about how I actually found aid climbing to be even more of this head game that I was experiencing in free soloing.
yeah,
And we could talk more about how that is, because people think there's this like dichotomy. There's the ultimate free soloing, and at the other end of the spectrum is wah, 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 aid climbing.
yeah.
And
I
it's like,
mean, so the first time I tried aid climbing, and I guess the intensity kind of diminishes over time. but I guess that depends on how hard the aid climbing is. That every placement you test, every placement you make, it has to hold at least your body weight, and it feels mentally so intense, and it's
Yes.
physically hard grafting. You're, it's like working on a building site where you're under constant fear. You're having to graft, plus you're having to deal with fear, plus it's physically really demanding, way more
It's
than free
much
climbing.
harder than people realize.
Oh,
Yes.
completely, yeah,
It is absolutely grueling.
yeah,
Yes.
yeah. So when,
Yeah. So we start talking about this, and next thing you know, they want to come out and experience the Riverside Quarry. So we go out there, and I had been working on a route. I had gotten the first anchor up, and there was one more pitch to go, which turned out to be just a 5/8 kind of angling traverse to get up over this dome, and then you're at the top. And the Riverside Quarry was created by drilling holes down into this cliff and blasting the cliff face away
yeah,
to mine the limestone out of there. And so it is a very fractured, very loose cliff face
yeah,
with lots of these unnatural fracturing and plates that are hanging there, and it's really pretty grotesque. Um, so I kind of gave a wicked look at Tim and Mark and said, "Well, the lead is up there." And they're looking at it going, well, it doesn't look like there's any way to protect it. And I said, I don't think there's going to be any protection, but it looks like it's only about 5/8. Well, you don't know what's up there. So Tim starts heading out on the lead, and he gets out about 10 feet, and his right handhold comes off, and he drops it and tries to find something else. And just as he gets it, his left foothold crumbles out from under him, and he's pawing around trying to get something else. And there's no pro. And next thing you know, he scuttles back into the anchor. Yeah, no, this isn't for me. Thought we were going to do aid climbing. And I said, well, yeah, let's do this, and then we'll go on to aid climbing. I was really just trying to see what kind of head they had.
yeah.
So Mark looks really white-faced and scared, having watched Tim's experience. and, and Mark says, okay, I'll give it a go. Well, Mark ends up pulling it off. Basically, just free soloed this, on-site crumbly 5/8, and I was like, oh man, this guy's got something.
Yeah,
And Tim very quickly just didn't want to do things at that level, and Mark did. And so Mark and I started climbing together at the Riverside Quarry a lot, and we put up dozens of first ascents out there. Um, when we were training to do the fifth ascent of the Sea of Dreams, we did 2 routes out there, 2 pitches each. All 4 of those pitches were way harder than anything we experienced on the Sea of Dreams.
oh,
And these were just like, little like throwaway climbs. I mean, those climbs have all been cleaned off at this point because it's turned into a free climbing area.
yeah,
So,
yeah,
so the free climbers have come out there with crowbars, and they've just cleaned off all the
yeah,
stuff we were actually using to aid climb on.
yeah.
So they turned them into like 513 free climbs, and all the features we were climbing on are gone. But yeah, Mark very quickly revealed that he had this kind of sick puppy mentality. And so, yeah, we started talking about doing things in the valley.
So when did you climb the Sea of Dreams?
That would have been in 90,
Okay,
no, 80, 87, I think it
okay,
was.
okay,
Yeah, I think 87 we did the fifth ascent of the sea.
okay. So I guess you had your experience in the sort of River Quarry. Is that what it was called?
Riverside.
Riverside Quarry. So if all the stuff that you'd climbed was harder than anything that you've experienced on Sea of Dreams, I guess that's given you, obviously you didn't know how hard Sea of Dreams was going to be. That's given you a
Right.
good base to, I guess, to feel that you could tackle something maybe of the unknown on El Cap.
Yeah, well, we had climbed Wings of Steel at that point. And of course, we were deep in the slander, you guys are living, breathing botch jobs and all this kind of crap that we were getting.
So
Um,
so just to give the listeners a backstory. So if you don't know, I will put a link in the description to the video Assault on El Cap, it's called. But just
yes,
to give the listeners a brief, is that you and Mark wanted to go and climb an unclimbed route on El Cap,
yes.
and you got a lot of abuse from some of the locals who, I guess, had named themselves or had not named themselves, who saw themselves as the keepers of El Cap. That if you wanted to do something as a new route, you had to almost have a job interview by them.
Yes, you had to have proved yourself by, sort of doing a tick list of,
Yeah,
escalating difficulty climbs on El Cap, and how dare you come into the valley and without having proved yourself, have the temerity to think you had any business on El Cap in the first place,
yeah,
because you haven't climbed Washington Column and you haven't climbed the Leaning Tower and you haven't done the Northwest route on Half Dome and you haven't done, I don't know, Zodiac, and you haven't done the tick list.
yeah,
So how dare you think you're worthy of this?
yeah,
um, but we weren't buying any of that.
yeah,
We had done very hard things at the Riverside Quarry,
yeah,
and people don't think about how you can be really immersed in a climbing culture and kind of know your place without having done a tick list.
yeah,
Um, and so we felt like we weren't going to do a botch job. And as it turned out, we didn't do a botch job. But of course, they all presumed we had done a botch job.
yeah,
Um, but we were living for decades in the pervasive slander that emerged from that. I mean, numerous climbing and rock and ice articles about the botch job. Books were published that talked about Wings of Steel as the example of how not to do it.
yeah,
We were just pariah in the climbing community. We would go out to climbing areas like Suicide Rock in Southern California, and I remember very well doing this one route on Suicide called Playing on the Freeway. And as I recall, it's rated 511C. It's a face climb. You do a fairly hard first pitch that's, I don't know, maybe 80-degree angle first pitch, very delicate face climbing,
yeah,
511B, I think it is, to get up to the first anchor. And then the second pitch sort of gently overhangs the slab, and you're doing the crux moves are like, I think, 511C up here before you get to a bolt. Well, it's really run out from the anchor. And if you fall up here in this 511C, you're going to fall down onto this slab. I mean,
yeah,
it's really an ugly fall. It's basically free solo. You have to be in a free solo mentality.
yeah,
And so I'm up there working on this 511C part, and a group of climbers has gathered at the bottom, and they're yelling all this trash up. You're going to splatter, Mad Bolters choke, just heckling and heckling. So not only am I up here looking at this just horrific fall, basically free soloing this 511C, but I've got this whole crowd of hecklers, down there just bagging on us. And I'm thinking to myself, the detached part of my brain is thinking, these guys literally don't even know what they're talking about, and yet they feel justified, to be in this mob
yeah,
uh, talking trash about something that they know nothing whatsoever about.
yeah,
And so the only way that you offset that is to succeed.
Yeah.
You don't offset that by taking the fall and ending up crippled, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
You have to succeed.
Yeah.
And that was just kind of our whole climbing career, in that crucible of distraction and defamation, was just, you have to do better, you have to succeed.
Yeah. So for 28 to 29 years, I guess you lived with all the I'm not sure how to describe it. I guess with all the shit that people have projected onto you for whatever reason, whatever their motivation was. And you had to live with that for 28 to 29 years
Yeah.
until somebody else, in this case, Ammon McNeely, had seconded, or did the second ascent of Wings of Steel, just to affirm to the world that what you and Mark had actually pulled out the bag was an incredible ascent in that day, especially.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I mean, some of the upper pitches, he downgraded with modern gear. Obviously, if we had had beaks up there, it would have been trivial, but we didn't have beaks, and by then we were almost out of copperheads, so we were doing some pretty sketchy stuff up in there to try to get through it. But the bottom line is, it was the Great Slab that was really the question. Did we just the line was 1,000 bolts to horseshoe, because you've got Aquarian wall that kind of comes up the right side of the great. I'm sorry, dihedral wall comes up the right side and turns into horseshoe, and then you've got Aquarian wall that kind of comes up the left side, and the great roof is at the top of that, what we call the overseer roof, and so basically there's a shared anchor at the top of the slab with horseshoe.
yeah,
And so the meme was 1,000 bolts to get up the slab. It's about a 1,200-foot high slab. And so, obviously it was exaggeration for effect, but the idea was every placement was a drill placement.
yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, you've got detractors even today that just refuse to let it go.
Really?
Oh yeah, I think Steve Grossman, as an example, is just determined that he alone knows the truth of Wings of Steel, and he'll never let it go. I sincerely do not know what is wrong with him. I sincerely do not. I've
I
had endless debates with him.
Yeah.
He seemed impervious to evidence. Yeah, I don't know. What are you gonna say?
He's my guess is that he's really stubborn, and two, that it might be an ego thing.
Yeah, and to me, it's really tragic, because I actually had a lot of respect for Steve. I mean, Steve has put up some very credible routes on his own account. And if that were Steve's legacy, I think that Steve would be, very highly regarded as as a climber. But I think sadly Steve has ridden this hobby horse, into splinters basically, and I think it's really done a lot of damage to his credibility just as a human being, which I think is really sad, because I had hopes over the years that Steve and I would eventually come to a meeting of the minds,
Yeah.
where evidence would finally prevail. But it's clear to me at this point that will never happen, and I think that's really sad, because I've been able to make amends with even our worst detractors that I know of, other than Steve. I mean, even the so-called shitters. I've been able to now enjoy a wonderful friendship with one of them in particular, and really value that friendship highly. We talk to each other on the phone regularly, and tremendous amount of mutual respect.
Yeah.
And so I've never harbored a grudge. I'm all about building bridges. I understand how people can get into a perspective that is based on less than adequate evidence, but they trust people that are pushing a line, and so they just buy into it.
Yeah.
I get how that whole herd mentality emerges,
Yeah. Yeah.
but Steve is an edge case, and I don't know that there's ever any reaching him, which to me is sad. I'd like to have absolute closure,
Yeah.
at the end of all this, but yeah, I think Steve is the outlier.
Yeah. I mean, you can change yourself. You can't change anybody else, right?
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And maybe not knowing Steve or not knowing his motivation, maybe it's like I can only assume that it might be an ego thing, maybe it's a confidence thing. Um, Maybe he doesn't like to show that he could be wrong.
Yeah, I I
I have
don't
no idea.
speculate about people's motivations because I've been the brunt of having people speculate about my motivation for decades, so I know what it's like to be on the receiving end of people impugning your motives.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to do that to Steve.
Yeah.
Um, but I wish there were a way to just talk really frankly and forthrightly about the totality of the evidence,
Yeah.
that we have before us,
Yeah.
and somehow come to a meeting of the minds. But it seems that's not to be.
Yeah.
So I've just kind of put that behind me. I mean, my life, it's not like Steve lives in my brain rent free. I literally never think about him unless we're in a context where, like this,
Yeah.
we're talking about it. To me,
Yeah.
it's just sad.
Yeah. So how did you personally cope with I guess all the flack that you received and lived with for 28 to 29 years until Amanad did the second ascent of your route? That must have been quite tough.
Well, it definitely hardened me as a human being.
Yeah.
I everybody wants to feel like they're part of a community. Everybody wants to feel like they know their place in a community. Um, and I'm not moaning or sniveling here or asking for sympathy. But that was denied Mark and I. We were literally very intentionally ostracized from that community.
Yeah.
So what that did was to sort of put us off to the side where our engagement with that community was to simply, as outsiders, look at what was happening inside the community and then sort of interject ourselves, back into that community by just doing things. And so after we had done the C, and then you've got things like Intifada coming up, where Bayer rates this thing A6, and it's right in my backyard. I mean, it's Utah. It's like an 8-hour drive away.
Yeah.
And Mark and I were just kind of like, well, we've done the C. The C at that time was regarded as the hardest big wall in the world.
Yeah.
And we're like, really? This thing is supposed to be way harder than the C? Like the gulf between A5 and A6 is this like vast mental gulf.
Yeah.
It's we're like, well, we have to go see what this is all about, and it was really this vast curiosity on our part. So we were driven to go see what this thing was, and so
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 we do
so
the second.
so sorry, just so for the listeners at home, so Intifada is an A6 route. Or was the grade was suggested to be A6, and A6 means that um, there the, the anchor, or at some point there's going to be an anchor system that is unable to take a lead fall,
Yes.
which means that if you're then climbing A5 moves on a route where there's the potential for a big fall, falling onto an anchor where the gear's not going to hold and the anchor's not going to hold, then unless you've got something else holding that previous anchor, it's likely to end up in death.
Yeah, you're gonna pull the whole house of cards down, and both people are going to the ground.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
tell me, you walked, you kind of decided to go and have a look at Intifada.
yeah. We thought, really, could there be such a thing as this? Uh, and Bayer solos the vast majority of what he does. So we're trying to imagine how you even construct an anchor, because you have to construct an anchor differently when you're soloing. You have to really be seriously contemplating the upward
Yeah.
pull on the anchor
Yeah.
in a way that you don't take nearly as seriously when you're in a traditional two-party uh, anchor configuration. Uh, yeah, so we were just kind of in awe of this rating, going, and you have to understand that because Mark and I were really total outsiders to the climbing community, and we knew that nothing we were going to do was going to get taken seriously. All of our motivations were the antithesis of sort of making a mark in the climbing community. We already knew that was denied us, right? I mean, we weren't trying to be heroes or develop a legacy, or any of the things that people now look back and say that was our motivations. It was the opposite. We knew that was denied us. For us, that was this very internal game. There was a very, I think, purity to what was motivating Mark's and my climbing, is we were both very much into this. It's a crucible of self-confrontation. It's very selfishly motivated. I
Yeah. Yeah.
mean,
Yeah. Yeah.
nothing lofty about it. It's just very selfish. Who are you as a human being?
Yeah.
What are I'm digressing now, but I
That's
mean,
okay.
we live this life, and people spend very little time thinking about what life is. And see, my problem is I ultimately got a doctorate in philosophy, and I'm very much a philosopher.
Okay.
And I have always been this like deeply live in my head contemplative person. And so
Yeah.
you're sitting at this anchor, watching your partner up there doing these heinous things, and you're thinking, I know what he's going through up there. And I'm contemplating, what the hell are we doing? What even is this? This
Yeah.
is a really, this is a stupid game.
Yeah.
I mean, when you think about what aid climbing is, it's an absolutely stupid pursuit. Like, there's no
Yeah.
zero objective value to this whatsoever.
There is
Like,
no
if you're
value to the world.
none whatsoever. This is an entirely selfish, navel-gazing act of sheer stupidity.
Yeah.
Um, so if you're not getting the value out of the navel-gazing, then you're risking your life for literally nothing.
Yeah.
And so Mark and I were very dedicated to this pursuit, this navel-gazing for its own value. And so Intifada struck us as this like just epitome of what that might be. And so we were highly disappointed by what we found there. Just highly disappointed.
In what
It
sense?
was not, yeah, it was not A6. I didn't think it was A5. Um, Mark did one lead on it that he thought was A5. When he led it, when I cleaned it, I found multiple placements that would easily have held a fall. I thought it was maybe A4,
Okay.
but we went ahead and gave it A5 in charity. But there's maybe, I think, one 70-foot section of the route that could questionably be called A5, A4, A5, somewhere in there. I don't know.
Okay.
As I say, ratings are almost meaningless, I think. But anyway, just it was not such a much. And, there was sabotage all the way up the route where, Bayer had done things like drilling holes and then packing them full of sand, so that you couldn't even discover what he had done.
Okay.
There's a whole traversing section that he drilled bat holes, bat hook holes,
Yeah.
and then sandpack them. And people will say, well, maybe you're being too harsh, maybe it was just, it's mud flows and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, look, I know that sandstone very, very well. There are areas that are mud flows, and then there are areas that are just clean, smooth, hard, windswept. And this section is one of those.
Yeah.
It's just absolutely clean sandstone for about 20 feet across, and it is blank. It is very good, very solid windswept sandstone.
Yeah.
And I get to this spot and I'm looking around just going, what the hell? There is nothing here. And so I just start like reaching out as far as I can, feeling around, and my fingertip feels this little, very slight divot, and I start scratching at it a little bit, and the hole starts appearing. So I grab my nail punch and just start fiddling around, and just instantly dig out a bat hole. And it's like, crap, man. Well, so when we cleaned this section, we tried to figure out how you could produce that effect. And we were able to very easily duplicate it by just taking some sand and some spit and just, packing the hole full of sand and then kind of rubbing it off smooth. It dries and it looks pristine.
Okay.
Yeah, there's no way. I'm serious. There's just no way that he didn't backfill those holes.
Yeah. Okay.
By leaving this blank section that you'd have a very hard time figuring out what to do to follow it.
Yeah. That's a shame. That's a real shame that I guess you were both hoping for uh I guess an A6 experience to understand what that feels like to then
Yeah.
be disappointed that somebody had I guess lied.
Yeah, I think the problem, I'm not going to go, well, okay, so I think the sabotaging is a form of lying. I'm not going to say buyer lied. I think, so,
Or what was
the bottom line is
I
when
guess
all you find,
what's the motivation in drilling the holes and then packing them up full of sand?
yeah, yeah, I guess there's no kind way to call that. I think of that as a form of lying. I think what you're doing in that case is you're basically trying to put a problem before subsequent ascensionists
Yeah.
that you think they're not going to be able to solve. And so as a result of that, you're going to be able to call, glory upon yourself. Like people are going to get to that point and say, Bayer's a god. He must have
Yeah.
done something that is so far beyond me, that I can't even conceive of it. And so I guess all I can do here is bail from here because I can't figure it out.
Yeah.
Therefore, oh, Bayer, what a god that he could figure this out.
Yeah.
I mean, the ratings I can give him a pass on because Bayer, as I said, almost entirely climbs solo,
Yeah.
rarely climbs established routes.
Yeah.
So you could say, well, he just doesn't know where the range is.
Yeah. But I guess if he's soloing, then maybe I guess if you're as a two-man team and you're climbing, you've got the counterweight of your B layer when you do fall. When you're soloing, you need like you mentioned earlier, you need an anchor that can withstand an upward pull. And maybe on some section, as a soloist, there was an anchor that maybe could not have held an upward pull.
Well, the
Again,
anchor, yeah, the crucial anchor for the section that would be in question, he had drilled out angles.
okay.
And so there were angle holes that, again, were sandpacked, but they had sort of hollowed out. And so, again, with a nail punch, you're like rooting around going, there's a full-on hole drilled in here. And sure enough, it perfectly takes a baby angle.
Yeah.
And you're like, okay, that was drilled for a baby angle. And I've got pictures that I had posted where you can even see the two grooves at the bottom. There's just no denying it was an angle hole. An angle is driven in there, and then in taking it out, as you knock it back and forth, the curvature of the angle blade, those two little bottom fins, they dig out kind of a groove,
Yeah.
and the pictures clearly show it. And so you're like, okay, you drilled out some baby angles here. This could take an upward pull, and
Yeah.
it's bomb-proof anchor. This is no. It was the same thing with the supposed lookout danger that Pollute put up on the Titan, where that one was supposedly rated A6 plus, and there was this picture going all around the world of the hook anchor.
Yeah.
And I get up there and find there's drilled angles fore and aft, and it's like, these guys are just making shit up. I'm sorry, it's
Yeah.
just
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, that's a shame. So those were the only two A6 climbs that you tried that ended up not being A6.
yeah. To my knowledge, those are the only two climbs in history that have ever been rated A6,
Yeah.
and both of them were just a vast disappointment.
Yeah. Okay.
So
Yeah.
yeah,
Sounds
I mean, at this point, I don't even rate climbs anymore on the A scale.
yeah.
Like when Ian Plaid did the first ascent of Line in the Sand on Cottontail Tower, which was my last major climb, we just rated it BLT. Every pitch, BLT.
Meaning,
Uh, if you need to ask, then you shouldn't do it.
okay.
Uh,
I have no
yeah,
idea because I don't do hammered aid climbing.
yeah. So I mean, and that's the point. I mean, it's hard aid. There's places on the route where I think you can die on it.
Okay.
So it's got some very grim sections.
Yeah.
Um, what do you rate that? A4R, that's a stupid rating.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
A5, well, I mean, yeah, I don't know. To me, aid rating is a fool's game.
Yeah.
I really like the sort of old style rating, where it's just basically a friend of mine, I think, came up with this, and it applies across all ratings, aid and free. There's hard, really hard, and I can't do it.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
I just feel like that just sums it up.
Yeah. So
There
how,
are no easy times.
yeah. So how do you personally deal with those moments when uh, I guess you are on maybe scary hooks or very insecure placements, and you're having to going back down is an option. So how do you personally deal with that fear and that intensity?
Well, it's a lifetime of judgment and experience of just what is this really? Like what's my situation really? I think the hard part for people as they're learning to aid climb is that you will often feel that you're more insecure than you actually are.
Yeah,
Um,
that's
because aid climbing, as you've noticed, as you've experienced, aid climbing brings this sense of insecurity the very first time you stand on this placement.
yeah, yeah,
Commit when you're free climbing, you have a very good feel
yeah,
of how secure you are on the rock.
yeah,
And you have a lot of sense of when you're about to come off.
yeah,
And you have a tremendous amount of control most of the time over when and how you are going to fall.
yeah.
That's not the case with aid climbing.
No,
And with aid climbing, you can be in the middle of trying to get from one placement to another in some awkward position, and suddenly everything comes apart and you're falling through the air in this just ridiculous position. It's instant, there's no warning. It's holding you, suddenly it's not. And I've had stuff blow up in my face that I thought was good and, withstood bounce testing, but, you get at a slightly different angle, you pull on it slightly differently and it's gone.
Yeah.
It's very insecure, but you're often in the mid grades of aid climbing, you're often more secure than you feel that you are.
Yeah.
So it just takes a lot of experience on thousands and thousands of placements spanning all kinds of scenarios
Yeah.
to develop a sense of judgment and a sense of what is my situation really here.
Yeah. I,
Um,
I guess it's the ability to not judge a situation with your emotions and basing
yeah,
the situation with the visible signs of what you can see.
yeah, what you can know. I
Yeah.
remember one section on Line in the Sand that, I mean, if I was going to rate it in traditional means, I'd rate it something like A3. But it's a very, very grim section, which is why I think ratings are just ridiculous. Because you're climbing up these sort of corrugated ripples. There's no clean landing all the way down.
Yeah.
It's probably an 87-degree angle. So you're going to hit everything at basically free falling speed, but you're going to hit. And you're looking at maybe a 40-foot fall to the anchor and then obviously past the anchor.
Yeah.
And it's all just bad placements. It's a very sandy groove. And basically all you can do are bird beak tips
Yeah.
and tiny copperheads, and it's all this sandy garbage. And every placement was one where I'd place it, bounce test it, and it would pop. And so I'd place it again, bounce test it, it would start to hold, I'd start to get on it, and it would pop. And it's like every single placement was just this minimal garbage. And I got way out there to this one spot in which all I could put in was a deadhead, which is basically you take like a lead fishing sinker and you thread a copperhead onto it. So you kind of have this small lead blob, and lead is very malleable. And
Yeah.
so you can get lead to stick where even an Illuma head won't stick. And it was just this kind of, I don't know, flared seam, but in the back of it, you could get a lead head to stick down in there.
Yeah.
But again, every time I would bounce test this, it would be holding. And so I'd start to move up on it, and it's like it could hold temporary shocks,
Yeah.
but as soon as there was sustained weight on it, it would pop.
Yeah.
And it would just, come out with a bunch of sand and make a slightly bigger little groove. And I'm just like, oh, this thing's just horrible. And so I finally got it to stick well enough that as I was just kind of hanging on it for like 5 minutes, it seemed to be holding. So my bounce test was to just stand on it for a while, you know. And I'm like, man, I don't know if it's going to hold my weight and the little shocks of me trying to move up on it. I'm like, this thing has 50-50, 70-30 that it's coming out. I mean, I don't think this thing's going to hold. I don't know, but it's all I can get. So I
Yeah.
start talking to Plaid, and I'm yelling down to Plaid going, here's the situation. Every placement up to here has been like this. I mean, it's garbage. Nothing's going to hold me. If I come out of here, man, I am just going to be busted up. And so we start talking about how he's going to have to rescue me out of there, and where I'm going to be dangling, what he's going to have to do. We literally spend like half an hour talking through, what this whole rescue thing is going to have to look like.
Yeah.
And at that point, having talked it through, I'm like, it is what it is, I mean, and so it's in that moment, that somebody would say, what the hell are you doing? This is like the stupidest of all possible human endeavors.
Yeah.
And objectively speaking, I can look at that and say it is. It's the stupidest thing you could do as a human being. I mean, what the heck are you doing?
Yeah.
And it comes back to just decades of, it's that moment of crystal clarity. It's that moment of
Acceptance of fate.
most people live their whole lives. They never know who they are. They never know what they are.
Yeah.
But it's in that moment that you know who you are. You know the deepest, darkest core of yourself.
Yeah.
And that clarity is worth getting into that position.
Yeah.
And it's like, there's no question I'm standing on it. There's no question that I'm standing on it.
Yeah.
And so I did, and it held, and I got up it. But Kevin, by the time I got to the top of that climb, I did like a deep reassessment of my entire life. And I'm like, I've rolled the dice so countlessly many times, and I have gotten out of this all there is to be had.
Yeah.
And it hit me like a ton of bricks at the top of Line in the Sand. I'm done. There's nothing more that I have to gain out of this endeavor,
Yeah.
because it is the stupidest human endeavor to climb at that level, unless you have this driving mission, that is motivating it all.
Yeah.
And I remember that placement with such crystal clarity, because I think it was in that moment that I realized, of course I'm going to stand on it. Fear has no more control over me. And I get choked up now when I say that, because it's like a lifetime of coming to own the fact that from age 10 to now, climbing did for me what I needed it to do.
Yeah.
And fear can have no control of my life.
Yeah.
And so I've won.
Yeah.
But having realized I won, I don't need to keep doing that anymore.
Yeah.
The drive, the motivation to do that anymore
Yeah.
is gone. I have tremendous respect for it. I would never I now, it's not like I'm looking back from some lofty position and looking down now on the people who are still doing this and going, see, I've reached the point now that I can look back and say how stupid this all is.
Yeah.
No, it's the opposite. I know what it can be in its purity, and I have the highest of respect for it.
Yeah.
But I don't need it anymore.
Yeah. So do you not ed climb anymore?
No,
No.
I literally have no interest.
Okay.
Like, I still have all my gear. I keep thinking, at some point I need to just sell all this. And my wife, who's herself a climber and who's been an anchor of support for me during all my hard climbs,
Yeah.
just encouraging me on, saying, come back. But if you don't, I get what you're doing.
Yeah.
Just awesome woman.
Yeah.
Awesome woman. But she says, no, don't sell it, man. I mean, if anything, look at it and know, but don't sell it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's a chapter of your life, right? And quite a big chapter of your life. And it's given you an identity. So it's, I guess, like a picture. I guess it's nice to have it nearby as a reminder of, I guess, the work you've put in.
Yeah. Yeah. The prices I've paid,
Yeah.
to own something about myself.
Yeah.
And it's been worth it. Like, I don't look back on it all going, what a fool's endeavor that all was.
Yeah.
It's the opposite. I don't regret a moment of it. I honor what it is, at least what it was for Mark and I. I mean, I don't know what it is for everybody, right? I mean, I know there's people out there that they climb for fun. They enjoy it. It's type 1 fun for them, maybe edging into type 2,
Yeah.
and I respect it at whatever level you're doing it, and I respect all forms of it. I'm not some purist or elitist.
Yeah.
But to me, there has to be a head game element to it, where it's not really climbing.
Yeah.
Like, I know I'm going to get flack for this, but I think of sport climbing as gymnastics, not climbing.
Yeah.
It's you're using the rock, or I see plastic in the background. It's like bouldering, sport climbing. It's a great endeavor in its own right, but it's not climbing, it's gymnastics. And that's fine. I have tremendous respect for gymnastics.
Yeah.
But if there isn't that element of like on-site risk, if the risk element is completely gone,
Yeah.
then there isn't that head game that is, to me, what defines what climbing is.
Yeah. But I guess if you look at if we look at your the list of climbs that you've achieved over the years, um, there's been and I guess you started off in the Riverside Quarry where I guess there was a lot of risk associated with the climbing for you.
Mhm.
And I guess over time, you maybe haven't become immune to it, but you've become, I guess, uh, you've you've become accustomed to feeling that element of real danger associated with your climbing. And I guess that's what it does for you. Whereas maybe somebody who goes sport climbing, it's sometimes there's real danger, but a lot of the times it's perceived danger. And I guess although the
Yeah,
feelings of fear are going to be the same, I guess because you've had such an intense amount of climbing under your belt with real danger involved, I guess to you, sport climbing and bouldering seem um,
tame.
menial. Menial.
Yeah, no, I hear what you're saying. I think that I'm defining sport climbing as being climbing where there is no risk.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
So if you've got a bolt every 5 or 6 feet,
yeah,
and like in the background there where you're overhung,
yeah,
you're going to take these short little drops.
yeah,
There's no objective
yeah,
risk.
yeah, yeah,
You,
yeah,
you might feel afraid, but that's not because you're in any actual objective danger.
yeah,
Then you're using the rock as apparatus.
yeah, yeah. But I guess that's also your experience of placing bolts and understanding how secure bolts are, and I
Right, right.
guess climbing on climbing on sky hooks and all different types of hooks on tiny little crystals, um, which is, I guess, completely different. And
Yes, yes.
that's yeah, and that's your experience. Yeah, and you've got all this wealth of actual, real, yeah, exposure to real danger. The bolts are like you can hang a house off a bolt.
Right, right. Yeah, no, you're making a very fair point, Kevin, I think. Um, so maybe let me recast it as, if there isn't that element of fear, then it's not climbing.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
even if your fear is not well placed,
yeah,
even if your fear is illusory because objectively speaking you're not in any danger,
yeah,
but if you're to me, climbing, you have to be confronting fear. There
yeah,
has to be that element of fear.
yeah,
Um, Otherwise, it's gymnastics,
yeah,
which again, I'm not disrespecting gymnastics. I have tremendous respect for these people that are crimping these impossibly tiny things and pulling off physical moves that are at the absolute limit of human connective tissue. Let's
yeah,
say, it's incredible what the best free climbers are doing. Uh, Endless respect for Honnold, for example. I mean, who can gainsay, the element of fear that Honnold's free solos have brought into the mix?
yeah,
Um, but maybe I can sum up my perspective in this one story. So I'm climbing at Big Rock and I'm free soloing all around the rock, and come back down the side, and I get to the point where I'm at the start of a climb. It's this 5/8 climb, and this guy is up there on the lead, and his wife is belaying him, and he's up there just really freaking out. Now this is 5/8, and so I'm free soloing all over even harder stuff than this, right? So I'm looking up there, I'm watching what he's doing, and the guy is just completely freaking out. And I'm never a guy who's, constantly yelling up beta to people,
Yeah.
because
Yeah. Yeah.
I think that's just really pretentious and demeaning to people.
Yeah. I agree. Yeah.
But his wife turns to me and she goes, he's really freaked. This is his first 5/8 lead, and he's up. It's fairly run out route. He's up like, I don't know, 7, 8 feet above the bolt, and he's got like another 7, 8 feet to go, and he's just not sure if he wants to look at a 30-foot fall. And he tries to make this move, but then he backs off and he tries it, and she's like, I'm getting really afraid for him. I don't want him to take this fall. You obviously know this route. Would you mind giving him some help? And I go, I don't want to get in his space, man. And she goes, no, please, seriously. So I yelled up and I said, could you use some beta? And he goes, dude, man, please. So I free solo up to beside him, and I point out this little toe pocket, and I'm like, that's actually way better than it looks, man. I'm serious. If you move over and just toe into that thing.
Yeah.
And he's like, there's no handholds. And I'm like, believe me, man, I've been watching you. You got that. If you just toe into that and just stand up, man, it'll hold you. I'm telling you. He does, and he stands up, and he makes it to the next bolt, and he finishes the lead, right? So
Yeah.
I free solo on up, and we both come down. So we get to the bottom, and he goes, dude, man, thank you so much. That was my first 5/8 lead, and Mark and I had climbed Wings of Steel at that point, and he goes, yeah, I know who you are, and I have been watching you, and I know you must think this is just ridiculous, that I should be so freaked out with this. And I'm like, look, man, let me set you straight here, okay? Climbing to me is what you just did. To me, it is all about the head game that you just experienced and that you just triumphed over.
Yeah.
At your level of experience, you get into that headspace at 5/8. At my level of experience, I get into that on A5 or free soloing 510 plus.
Yeah.
Okay. It's the headspace that I respect. It's not the rating at which that headspace occurs.
Yeah.
So I applaud your triumph, man, because you are a climber through and through. And the guy starts crying. Yeah. And I start crying thinking about it, because that headspace is what I respect. And I don't care if you're doing it at 5/5. I don't care if you're doing it at 5/14.
Yeah.
I don't care where you get into that headspace. To me, to magnify the rating, to applaud people because they've achieved a certain rating, that's completely missing the point, because then you're glorifying a certain level of achievement. But to my mind, if you're in that headspace, that's the achievement.
Yeah.
That's the achievement.
Yeah.
That's what climbing is.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. Yeah. I guess then that's what it is for me, and that's I'm guessing what it is for maybe a lot of people too. But there are lots of people that might not know, or I guess it's levels of fear, isn't it? Some people might struggle with that intensity. And I guess it's learning to get accustomed to it, depending on one as a personality. And for some, I guess in that moment, the fear level that he felt was he was too much outside of his comfort zone. And I guess what helped was you being there to give him that confidence in that moment. Because had you not been there, he might have ended up in a worse situation, taken a big fall, and might have never gone back into climbing.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So
Yeah, I do think it's the case that somebody with a little more experience can kind of help you get past another level of coping.
yeah,
You
yeah,
you, you learn mechanisms to deal with fear.
yeah. And I guess
People
it,
say, love is the strongest motivator, or money is the I am convinced that the absolute strongest motivator is fear.
yeah,
I think that the
I guess
vast majority of people make the vast majority of their life decisions ultimately anchored in some form of fear.
yeah, yeah,
We avoid what we're afraid of, and so we get ourselves constrained into narrower and narrower life pathways. Because look, the early decisions you make in life, you go through certain doors which preclude you from going through other doors, and bit by bit over the course of your life you end up in the thread of your life getting more and more constrained in terms of what options remain available to you.
yeah,
And
yeah,
when you're making those life choices on fear, so that your life thread keeps getting nudged in different directions through avoidance and
yeah,
comfort seeking,
yeah,
then I think you artificially limit the doors you're able and willing to go through in your life. And so I think it honestly affects the whole course of your life.
yeah,
Uh, and so to me, that's the objective. If people want to say, why do you climb? What's the point of climbing? That would be what I'd say. The objective value of learning mechanisms of how to assess risk soberly and honestly. I mean, I'm not advocating taking stupid risks
yeah,
or putting yourself in stupid situations for no good purpose.
yeah,
The classic, here, dude, hold my beer kind of stupidity, right?
yeah, yeah,
You know, I'm talking about sober risk assessments where you say, should I go back to get my MBA? It's going to cost me $60,000. What are the risks to rewards here? This is a big decision. Maybe this is going to really mess with my life, where you're assessing these risks and
yeah.
it's a scary thing. Do you not do it because you were afraid, or do you not do it because of a sober, genuine, objective risk assessment? I think most people are just not very sober in
Yeah.
their risk reward assessments.
So do you feel that with the years of experience that you've had in exposing yourself to various levels of fear, do you feel that I guess the coping mechanisms that you found over the years, do you feel that that's helped you in life?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I started my own company about 25 years ago, an ed tech company, and we bootstrapped our way for 25 years. And I cannot count the number of times of laying awake at night or working until 4 o'clock in the morning, just stressed, like, wow, if we don't get this next school, I don't know if we're going to make payroll. Um, how much debt are we willing to go in? Um, Hard questions. Or losing a key account and going, man, are we going to survive the next year? Um, the stresses of running your own company are astronomical.
Yeah.
You're barely making it, and then in Colorado, 1 year they tripled our commercial property taxes in 1 year. Literally,
Yeah.
we go from paying about $8,000 a year in property taxes, which is already obscene, to suddenly they're hitting us with a $24,000 tax bill.
Yeah.
And it's like it's devastating as a small company. Devastating. There are no words.
Yeah.
How the hell are we supposed to do this? Uh, yeah, so the stresses of business, and I can't count the number of times. And Mark was my business partner in this as well. And Mark and I would just go, well, dude, we're free solo. We're way out on an A5 lead right now.
Yeah.
And what do? I mean, our line is you embrace the horror.
Yeah.
I mean, you embrace it, you live in it, you revel in it, you mock it, you engage all those coping mechanisms that you've learned, and you take the next step. You move up. You don't like try to figure out, okay, how are we going to go about shutting this thing down? What's next in life? No, you commit, you press on. You're like, of course I'm standing on the placement. You forge ahead.
Yeah.
And 6 months ago, we sold our company to a bigger ed tech company, and I'm precluded by our NDA from saying any details at all, other than to just say we did very well.
Yeah.
And now all of that stress is gone.
Yeah.
And now we're poised for just dramatic future success. And we won. But we won in the face of standing on the placement and standing on the placement and standing on the placement. And it absolutely has translated into the successes that I've enjoyed in life. And they're these mental games just dovetail.
Yeah. Yeah. I guess I myself and my other two colleagues, we do a lot of mental coaching for climbers. And although we help climbers, you can see a lot of personality traits that obviously that come up within climbing that are completely relevant in everyday life. But
Yes.
we are not kind of psychologists that help people deal with life. We help people specifically in climbing.
Yes, exactly. And you are absolutely right that it translates into life.
Yeah.
I think that what you can learn out of climbing translates into you living a more empowered life.
Yeah.
To me, it's empowerment. It's this sense of I've learned how to embrace the horror,
Yeah.
and I've learned how to be way outside my comfort zone, which empowers me to make really sober and well-conceived risk assessments. And so I make better decisions in life.
Yeah.
I take fear seriously.
Yeah.
There
Yeah.
are risks to
Yeah.
what I'm contemplating,
Yeah.
but I'm not driven by the fear.
Yeah.
I'm taking it as a data point. It's real. I have to engage with it,
Yeah.
but it doesn't drive me. It's a data point.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's acknowledging that it exists and
Yes.
to objectively try and see why it's happening and to see whether you can
Yeah.
work through it.
Right. Maybe it's a good warning. Maybe I should back
Yeah.
off here.
Yeah. Yeah. Maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm in no way suggesting to people that when you're afraid, go ahead.
Yeah.
That's stupidity.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm not talking about hold your beer.
Yeah.
I'm talking about take it as a data point, take it seriously. There's something on the con side of the scale here that you better carefully weigh.
Yeah.
But most people, I think, say, yeah, that's just too scary. I'm not doing it.
Yeah.
And that, I think, is equally, if not even worse, a mistake than the hold my beer kind of stupidity.
Yeah. Because I guess, oh, I guess it's understanding the fear, isn't it? It's understanding why it's there. I think acknowledging that it's there and even backing off something
Yes,
to look
yes,
to try and look back at it and think, well, why did that happen? Was that my emotion talking? And was it because I was way outside my depth? Even was that too much fear for me in the moment?
yes,
Do I need to have a smaller challenge for myself? Or
yes.
did I allow the emotion to talk me out of something when I wasn't objectively trying to assess the dangers?
Yeah, that was beautifully articulated, in my opinion, Kevin. Beautiful.
Yeah,
Yeah.
thanks. Yeah. So, um, yeah, we talked a lot about fear, and I guess fear is the main a lot of things that holds a lot of people back, right? Yeah.
Well, for me, it was the whole big motivator, right? So
Yeah.
maybe I'm bringing kind of a distorted, twisted emphasis to this whole thing, but for me, from the time I started,
Yeah.
that was my drive.
So two more questions, I guess. Um, if you could go back in time and give yourself some advice, ideally with regards to climbing, what advice would you give your younger self?
I've never been asked that, Kevin. Um, I think looking back at my life now, and especially, recent successes, I mean, I can look at very particular climbs that I have backed off of exactly in the way you described, where I'm like, yeah, I'm not ready for this one.
Yeah.
Um, and I think now looking back at those, I might have said, no, no, you could have pulled that off. But I wouldn't have advised myself to push on. Um, I I honestly can't think of anything that I would have advised myself to do differently, because that kind of looking back and advising yourself to do different kind of presumes that you have some God's eye epistemic privilege at which you could have done better in that moment.
Yeah, I guess maybe I guess maybe a better question to ask is, or maybe a different question to ask would be, what mental advice would you have given yourself with regards to climbing? Is there any advice that you would give yourself and go back in time, or maybe something that was a weakness that you thought, well, actually, yeah, that I'll try and work on that.
I do think that we were at a fork in the road after the Wings of Steel thing, in which, as the climbing community sort of all of a sudden rejected us and isolated us, that I think perhaps Mark and I embraced that horror a little too quickly, in the sense that we may have responded in some circumstances defensively when, like, I remember that whole thing with playing on the freeway, and there was a well-known climber at that time, Mike Paul, who was in that group that was heckling us. And after I got down from that climb, Mike came over to me and he said, that went too far. And I'm personally sorry. I think you guys did an absolute botch job up there on Wings of Steel. I don't respect you as a climber, but I want to apologize for that, because I don't think there's any call for things to go that direction. And I'm really sorry for that.
And what was
And I
that?
told him, I'm sorry.
And what was that? What did he do?
Mike's done a bunch of LCAP climbs.
Okay.
Um,
So but
and
what did he do negatively towards yourself and
well,
Mark?
he was part of that heckling group,
Okay,
that was
right, okay,
heckling
okay.
on the freeway. And I think that as that went on, he kind of backed away and said, yeah, no, this isn't right what we're doing.
Yeah,
So he alone among that group, he pulled me off to the side and he apologized for that. And I remember that to this day. And, I'm calling him out publicly, Mike Paul, I appreciated that.
yeah.
And I remember it very clearly. And I said, Mike, I really appreciate that. Um, I, I don't know how to bridge the gap, because I don't think what we did was a botch job. And I think you ought to take another look at it. Um, I think there were times in which Mark and I maybe could have sought out those kinds of conversations that we didn't. Maybe we should have approached that group afterward, and said, look, guys, what's going on here?
Yeah.
And tried to talk it through. I think we kind of withdrew into ourselves
Yeah.
and embraced the isolation and responded to it by sort of intentionally being more insular than we needed to be.
Yeah.
And that is, I think, the one thing that I regret is I may have been able to actively build bridges in seeking to engage in dialogue that I wasn't seeking out. I kind of felt like I know they're wrong. I know they're in the wrong. They owe us the apology.
Yeah.
And so while I appreciate Mike Paul apologizing to us, I think I should have been seeking out those conversations more than I did. I don't know that we could have changed any minds,
Yeah.
but I think it may have helped us feel less isolated.
Yeah.
There may have been easier bridges built over time.
Yeah.
I don't know. As again, I'm not in an epistemically privileged position. I don't know how it would have turned out, but I think I would have been a somewhat better human being had I been able to be a little more lofty even than I was, and be the one seeking to build bridges instead of sort of waiting for them to recognize they're wrong and come to me to apologize. I think
Yeah.
I could have been more gracious
Yeah.
than I was.
I don't think they made themselves very approachable.
No, they didn't. But I, looking back with the wisdom of hindsight,
Yeah.
I could have been a better person. I could have done more to reach out than I did.
Yeah.
Instead, I sort of blamed them for even sniffingly dismissive. Oh, they're just part of the herd. And I do have a real suspicion for herds. When people group themselves up into herds, be it politically, religiously,
Yeah.
I don't care what the herd is.
Yeah.
You're engaging in groupthink.
Yeah.
You've traded off your precious, sacred ability of individual critical thinking, and I think your moral responsibility to always engage in that.
Yeah.
You trade that off,
Yeah.
for the comfort of being part of a herd.
Yeah.
And I despise that.
Yeah. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
despise it to this day. So I think I just heap despicability upon them,
Yeah.
while fallaciously not realizing that any individual of that herd might be approachable, and I should have done more to approach them, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. And I guess last question is, what advice would you give any other climber that's possibly helped you?
I'm fearful to do that because I do fear that my particular approach to this has been so maybe even distorted by my early 10-year-old fear and this kind of crazed Quixote-ish mission that I set for myself.
Yeah.
I don't want to impose that on anybody else.
Yeah.
I guess I would just say that fear that you're experiencing is neither good nor bad. It's what you do in assessing it and learning coping mechanisms about it.
Yeah.
I have found it to be a good thing.
Yeah.
I'd say embrace the horror.
Yeah.
That's the motto I live by, literally. It's my line. Embrace the horror.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you for that. Yeah. Embracing the horror.
Such as it is.
Quite a few stories about embracing the horror.
I'm sure you do.
Yeah. So thank you for your time, Richard.
Oh, it's been a real pleasure, Kevin. You have been super engaging, and I have really appreciated your insights.
Oh, well, it's really great. It's been an honor to talk to you, and I really appreciate you taking the time out of your schedule to talk to us.
True pleasure. I hope it's beneficial to your listeners.
Oh,
I
it's
really do. I
amazing. Thank you.
really appreciate what you guys are doing, Kevin. I think as soon as I looked up what you were doing, I'm like, yes, this is good stuff. So
Yeah.
I honor you. I honor what you're trying to accomplish.
Thank you. I take that as a compliment. Thank you. Thank you, Richard.
I mean it as one.
I hope you enjoyed the podcast today with Richard Jensen. It was an incredible, open, and deep and meaningful conversation, and really appreciate your openness and honesty, Richard. If you guys at home have got any topics you'd like us to talk about, please send us an email or send us a message. Otherwise, we'll see you next time.